Welcome to the Kez Sez Podcast. I'm Kez. Join me for stories, songs, and memories. Hey, welcome to the first episode of the Kez Sez Podcast. Today, I thought I'd talk about why I'm even doing this podcast and what inspired me. So ultimately, what happened was I came up with a lot of old photos and memorabilia from growing up in Ramona, based off of my family's photos and death certificates and, different things like that. My sister had mailed me some a couple of years ago, and then my cousin did as well, which was from my dad's sister's daughter. And I got kind of caught up in that, scanning everything and going through it. And it just really churned up a lot of memories. All my kids are grown up and have moved out. And so now I'm an empty nester and thinking, wow, it would be really cool to do an album of those songs that I feel coming up out of me about the memories of my youth. So I started a project called RAMONA, Memories of My Youth, and did a lot of scratch tracks, recording myself playing acoustic, worked on the lyrics based off of, real memories. In my past, I did a lot of songs that were not really based off of true things. They were just, I'm a songwriter and I'm going to write a song about heartbreak or love or, one about dreams. One was about dreams that I had about nuclear bombs back in the 80s, with the Cold War. And so there's a lot of interesting things that have come about, but I never really thought, okay, I'm going to hunker down and write a bunch of songs that deal with real memories and real people and real places. So that's what I did. And then I got to the point where I go, man, I got so many little memories that are coming back now as I'm focusing and thinking. I can't fit them all in these songs. So at the same time, why don't I just start a podcast that people could join me in the storytelling and say, yeah, I remember growing up in Ramona, or I remember San Diego, or I remember the similar things, based off of the age that I am and the period in which I grew up. So one of the first things I thought would be relevant to creating an album and being a musician would be, what led to me becoming a musician? So I can say that, all of my most main memories all come from Ramona. I moved there back from the summer in between second and third grade. That was, I think, 1967. And then I started school in third grade, had Mrs. Ona Ransom. Got a lot of stories I thought I'd tell about school and the different personalities and stories of what happened that probably a lot of people have memories too. So that'll be fun. But from the musical standpoint, there's two things that happened that came to mind. And one of them was, I remember going to a summer school program in Ramona Elementary School, probably between 5th and 6th grade, maybe, or 4th and 5th, one of the two. And I don't remember who was in charge of it, but it was kind of like a creative summer school class thing where we would use the auditorium that is also the cafeteria. Still stands today. I went and checked it out months ago. I did a little touring around Ramona, visiting my old haunts and stuff and seeing how things were and how they had changed. It was right here at 8th and F Street in the multi-purpose building that we're looking at, where I got on the stage for the first time, probably 4th grade, summer school maybe, and sang Born Free. Oh man, I got stage fright and I froze, but fast forward a couple years later, then I'm went to a dance here, I think probably when it was either 6th or 7th grade dance. And there was a band that played Stairway to Heaven live right at the same year the album came out. So, and the drummer played flute. And I was sold then, I needed to be a musician. That was exactly what I was going to do. So in that auditorium, we used to get together. I don't know how many of us there were, probably like a regular classroom full of kids, like 30 or so. And we had a teacher leader. I remember she was a female. I can't remember who it was, but she played piano and, led the class or for summer school. And so one of the things that we did was we would go up and do, spontaneous. Well, it wasn't ultra spontaneous. We got time to come up with an idea about, hey, or what can you do that's kind of funny, to create a little drama skit or a comedy skit and something like that. So we did end up doing that. And one of the ones that me and whoever my partner was, I don't remember, came up with about It's the Water. It was an old beer commercial about either Coors or Bush or something, or Olympia. And it's the water, the sewer water, and we just thought that was funny as young kids that we were. But that I remember just because I remember it. And the other thing was a big event for me was the first time I performed something. So the teacher and I were going over the song called Born Free, which was made popular at the time by a movie called Born Free about lions. And I think it was kind of like a biopic documentary about someone who actually went out and was filming this family of lions and made a movie about it. And so that's all I remember. And I remember being at home at my house at 345 F Street in Ramona and walking down the steps, kind of fantasizing that I was this performer singing Born Free as the wind blows. I remember that. And thinking it was like, yeah, I'm going to be a star or something. And when the day came, I believe it was a Saturday, so all the parents could come, not working, to do our talent show or whatever it was. She started playing, the curtains opened, and then I looked out and I just froze. I got stage fright or whatever, and I couldn't get anything out of my mouth. I remember this very vividly. And I remember her kind of like looking over at me, and then, they would mouth the words like that, how to start it. And then she would keep going back and restarting the song at the point I was supposed to come in singing. And I just couldn't do it. But somehow I choked something out, maybe halfway through the song, or she started singing it. And then I eventually joined in, with my, whatever it was. I don't remember. But that would have been classic if we had an 8mm film of that. But anyway, that's my first memory of performing, and it didn't come naturally. I had stage fright, and wow, what a weird thing to do, to think the whole time that it would be no sweat, no problem. I can sing this, I can do it. And then when you're actually there on a stage in front of people, it don't go so well. Secondly, another memory is the first time I made music. And so when I was younger, my mom got this little like air organ there at 345 F Street. And it was one of those ones where you plugged it in, you could hear the fan turn on. And I know it had reeds now, what they were. And so they were pre-programmed. So when you pressed it down, it would open up the valve and the air would blow through the reed, much like a harmonica or a flute or whatever. And they were kind of chords, actually. So some buttons were chords, to say A minor, B major, or whatever it was. And then you had a little chart that had color codes, and it made it easy. So I remember the only songs I kind of like knew were like Christmas songs, from singing them or hearing them all the years I grew up. So, I was doing Silent Night or, some other Christmas songs. And I just thought that was so cool. Like, I can make music, and that was the first memory I have of, I might have been 8, 9 years old or something. And then as time went on, my mom started collecting other musical instruments. She was an artist. And anyway, it's all history from there. I learned to play guitar just on the one string, the bass string. And I remember the first song I figured out was $1 Billion Babies by Alice Cooper. And this goes all the way back to me all of a sudden from being 8 and doing this organ thing to being like 13, 14. And that's when I first started learning to play guitar and playing around with my mom had gotten a piano. And this was all after my mom and dad had gotten divorced, in 1972 when I was 12. And then in that new life where my dad had left and my mom was there as a single mom, she started doing more artsy stuff because she had more time, like focusing on herself, I suppose. And then came up with the piano, and then, the guitar, and then a ukulele, and then, a tambourine. And my dad always had a banjo back when I was growing up, never really paid attention to it. And then now I wish, wow, that would have been so cool to have that banjo from, the early days. And he got it because he really liked the song Mr. Bojangles by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And they had a little banjo part on there, and so I think he got a banjo because of that. But I'm not really sure, because I found some old pictures when those pictures came in, I mentioned earlier, from my sister and my cousin, that showed him with the banjo when I must have been either a baby or maybe even before I was born. I don't know. Early pictures of my dad, he had joined the Navy right out of high school. He got polio. There was a story I learned from when my parents got divorced. I went back to my grandma's house, and she told me stories about what was going on when he was a teenager, in high school. And I went there, started my first year of high school in Ramona. Then while my parents were going through the divorce, they shipped me back out to my dad's parents' house, who lived in Missouri. And I went to high school at Raymore Peculiar High School for the rest of the year. And, that was wacky quacky. And then came back and continued at Ramona in my sophomore year. But all of that, kind of led to the more musical, I really, during the divorce and, all my family going kind of nuts, I became, would dive into my music, to kind of like blanket out the drama. So, I would have a little earbud in a transistor radio out in Missouri and tuning into some station, and they were playing Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes. And of course, by that time I had already been hearing Led Zeppelin, on AM radio. They used to play Led Zeppelin, KCBQ, and, a lot of the one-hit wonders, but some of the super groups, like a Who song or a Led Zeppelin song. Deep Purple had Hush, going back in the day. And then, so all these groups, kind of stuck with me as I got older and went into different music. But there you have it. That's the story of my first performance at Ramona Elementary School in the auditorium, and then my next time that I created music, not long after that. A major event, too, there's a lot of them that happened right there, all in that same neck of the woods, between the school and Collier Park. I lived 2 blocks up the street on F Street from Collier Park. And then if you continued through Collier Park and then over F Street, you would go over the hill and dump right down into the auditorium. It was right there, and the playground, and I guess you'd call it the annex part of the school, where the elementary school was down across from the community church with the bell and Mr. McDonald. The principal's office, got to visit that one time. That's a good story. And then, a lot of things, growing up in Ramona, and all those memories is really, there's a lot of sweet things that I remember, and then there's some bleak things that I remember, like when your parents get divorced and that kind of thing. But that's why I'm doing the podcast. I just want to revisit all those stories and kind of back it up with songs that I'm writing about, things and places. Most of them are going to be more about, when you start, you're a teenager, being a tween into a teen, and then, of course, turning into a young adult is where most of your adventures are happening. But certainly there's a lot of good memories of things that, as a kid, going camping and, all the different areas, going out to the desert, through Julian, down Banner Grade, and then rock hounding. And then my dad worked at Convair, and they had a missile park there and a little train that ended up coming up to Valley Center at Bell Gardens. A lot of history here in our little San Diego that look forward to covering and being a storyteller. It's all new for me, but it's good that I'm doing it because I just think it's going to be fun, and it'll be something for my kids and my future family to look at, and for all of you guys that might be from Ramona or from San Diego, or just in my age group, or interested in one man's simple, unskilled method of storytelling. I hope it works out. But it sounds like fun, and so I just wanted to do it. And I think we'll just call it quits for now. That's a nice little short episode. Episode 1, Kez Sez. All right, talk to you later. Tune in for episode 2. We'll talk some more. See ya.